welcome to the Q&R Code podcast on this beautiful summer Tuesday. I am your twin co-host, Quinn, and on the other side is my twin and my best friend, Riley.
Hello, everybody.
And guess what?
We are both coming locked and loaded with gorgeous, gorgeous sunflowers for today's episode.
Which I was so graciously gifted by a friend who attended our little farmstead soirée on Saturday.
Aww.
So that made my heart warm.
That's such a thoughtful gift.
I know. A couple of people brought me fresh flowers, which was wonderful because we then set the tables with them. And now I get to have beautiful fresh flowers. So I truly appreciate a gift like that. And you guys,
I was so graciously gifted mine by Mother Nature.
Yes, you harvested those straight from your backyard, didn't you?
Mm-hmm. You can tell that I do have one bloom that the birds got to first, but that doesn't deter me.
That is so special, Rye. And then what else is in there? Is it your calendula or am I wrong?
No, so we have, these are called anemones, and those were actually leftover from floral arranging that I'll tell you guys more about. Same with these little pink roses that are kind of hiding in there. But then I have one little bright pink zinnia that's hiding in the back that is also from my yard.
I think zinnia is what I meant. I see a little pop of pink. But speaking of roses, we have a rose bush on our property. We did not plant it. That was a lucky thing that we inherited here, and it is in full bloom right now. So we have lovely, dusty pink roses. You guys, it is also Roger's birthday today. Roger, Riley's baby dog, turned 3 today.
Happy birthday, little knucklehead.
So exciting.
They grow up so fast.
I know. Sean was like, I can't believe he's already 3. And that's how I feel when I think about the fact that my horse is 8. It is crazy.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is wild.
And my cat Lucifer is 6. They just keep on growing. And my baby dog
is the age where people said, like, oh, when your dog is 3 or 4, sometimes they say, like, they can start to calm down and settle more into adulthood. And I have found that to be the case. Of course, we still have some reactivity we're navigating, but in general, as Quinn is in the throes of now, he used to just be a much more 24/7, couldn't walk away from him, didn't know what he was going to get into type of situation, and now he is mostly always can be found laying down and sleeping somewhere.
Such a good
so
boy.
That's a pleasure. That
is a pleasure, and thank goodness that's been the case for Pinkerton too. Here's a little crack of a peach strawberry spindrift.
Thank you very much. Ugh,
another
you guys
thing,
know how Quinn and I feel about
gifted.
an Olipop. Aww.
We are interrupting each other so bad this episode, and I don't know what to do.
First of all,
it's mostly been me.
It's no problem. We're just having a little convo, but also I will get into that more when I share a reading update, because I have some very interesting things to tell you about language, specifically women's language. But anyway, I saw the orange cream Olipop that Quinn and I do very deeply enjoy, but I'd already checked out at the store and saw it on my way out, and I was
and like, so you stole one.
I wish I should have, but no, so I just didn't have that. But something about a dreamsicle summer will always ring true for me.
A quick note on
But instead
Olipop.
I have some sun tea that I brewed outdoors.
I love sun tea. I love sun tea. Just takes me right back to home. Our big glass pitcher
classic
that Mom would fill up.
I brewed mine in a glass pitcher, and it was so nostalgic.
Put on our picnic table, just see the sun doing its little magic. I love that. But quick note on Olipop. If you guys, I forget, I call it Olipop, but then I feel like I literally code switch for the podcast and call it Olipop. I don't know.
I think it's Olipop, like lollipop.
I think it's Olipop too, and I don't know. It like, hey, Bunny, you are not a part of this episode. If you guys can hear him, just know that he's just a puppy trying his best, and today he's the least settled that he's ever been starting a podcast recording, so I did everything I could to meet his needs, but he is a little unsettled. Anyhow, Samira, I got it right this time. Samira, if you guys recall that I talked about her several episodes ago, that she is a multi-talented person, but that one thing she does is she's an influencer that specifically focuses on and promotes size inclusivity and being a plus size person. He's really trying to steal my thunder, you guys. But anyway, he's
passionate about size inclusivity.
Yes, he is. He's like, I am going to be an extra large dog, and I am passionate about this topic. But she shows like snippets of herself either working with brands or sending messages to brands because she is an advocate and calls out brands if they're doing something fatphobic or saying something fatphobic or not following through on the fact that they state that they're size inclusive and then they just won't have plus sizes, so on and so forth. So Olipop had reached out to Samira a long time ago saying, we love you, we love your content, we want to send you some merch. And she said, well, I'm looking at your merch and I see that you don't have size inclusive merch. So first of all, I wouldn't be able to fit into what you have to offer. And second of all, I really want to work with brands who believe in this and who promote inclusivity, etc. And they said, which all of these brands say, we have taken this feedback, we will share it with our team, we completely respect this and care about this and will address this. And then that was like months and months ago. She received a package from Olipop the other week and they sent her merch. It was not in her size. It is not size inclusive. And so, Olipop, we really like you. And Riley and I, you're one of our dream collaborators and you've got to do better. Period. And more places. It's just it's still not commonplace at all to have size inclusivity. I need to address this dog. Also, he's chewing on his crate. I'm sorry.
I feel like it's so particularly rude to send someone what is supposed to be like, free things, hoping that they can utilize your following that you've built like trust and loyalty with and all these things, like they get something out of that as a brand by doing it, knowing you have responded to them and said this doesn't fit me, and sending someone something that is several sizes too small is just such a distinct type of disrespect to me that when she was sharing about that story, I just thought about how frustrating that would feel because they are hoping that she'll promote for them. That's what it is. If you wear someone's merch, is you are promoting, whether it's on the internet or just out and about in real life, and it doesn't even fit. Like, that to me is so out of line and just disrespectful. And I know there are people, Samira, I'm telling you, this woman must have the most like resilience out there, because not only is she a woman online, she is a plus-sized woman of color online. So just imagine how much flack she receives constantly.
Yeah.
And that's
imagine,
not
and
deserved.
she sews receipts as well. Like people,
you don't even have to imagine, because it's just right out there in the open. And I really think that she is doing a great job of holding people accountable by bringing these things to light. But I also think that that's clearly not like her solo mission, and that as a community, we just need to do better with that. But yeah, long story short, I hope that there's not just lip service about that, and that they do genuinely care to make that change. And also, I'm like, as a beverage company, you didn't even have to put yourself in the position to have this issue. You didn't need to create that, but you did.
Well, on to the next thing. Should we talk about flowers? And Riley has updates for you guys on her floral arranging class and her little, well, I guess we gave updates on your class, but you have more info on your job, and I have info on my party planning. Rai, do you want to start us off?
Yes, so I told you guys last week how the class went well and that there was potential work on the horizon, and so I did indeed get to go do florals for a wedding. It was just me and the owner of this event company that she's who taught the class and has done completely self-taught florals for the past 40 years. It was really nice to just be one-on-one with her and get to see all about processing the florals and the storage and how you're making things last, and then the thinking behind the designs. And she lives on a farm, so there was stuff that we foraged, but there was a lot of stuff that was ordered because it's a wedding. People want particular flowers and particular things that may or may not be able to be grown here or be in season. So it was kind of crazy to see the volume come through, and she said this is by far like a much smaller wedding than she normally does. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, I don't know. It's such a particularly time sensitive situation that no wonder they're often working down to the wire as florists, because no matter how many flowers you need to get in, it kind of all has to be done the day before. Not the whole process, of course. This was like 4 days that we worked, but a lot of the arranging and whatnot has to be done very close to your event because it's a perishable thing and people want to receive their flowers looking primo. Fair enough. So learning about that was great. And also, you guys know Quinn and I love community building, and I was really glad to just get to know this woman more, and she is very good at like pulling people in. She's one of those people that doesn't have like walls up, and about it feels like her connections are your connections, and so she was connecting me to other people and invited me to an event, and I feel really grateful that not only did I get to work with flowers and do something that I love so much on that front, but I got to know her a lot better and feel like we are friends moving forward, and that I could have more relationships because of it. Again, this is a woman that is several decades older than me, like my BFF neighbor, and I just tend to have those connections. I told her about my neighbor and that I've wondered, oh, does she perceive me as her friend, or like what does she think? Because I think of us as friends, and she was like, I think she thinks you're friends. You're just someone that is easy to get along with and hang out with and interesting, and not to be on here tooting my own horn, but it's just true. Nice. And it's nice when somebody like her, I feel like, is a good reminder that it just feels good to people to pull them in, and instead of you feeling uncomfortable and awkward, like, oh, should I invite them to this? Is it too soon or whatever? Not to doubt that, and just have that openness makes people feel so included. And I hope to get to do more flowers soon. She doesn't have any more events going on this summer, but I might seek out more freelance floral work because it's so fun and I love it.
And so
That's my synopsis.
were you like with gloves trimming a bunch of stems starting to arrange stuff, or what was your duty?
Yeah, not with gloves because she loves to feel the flowers, which I thought was cool. She said if it was something that was like particularly sticky or could irritate your hands, maybe she would, but yeah, I did the whole like everything she was doing, I did as well. So you know, pull off the foliage down to where it needs to be and trim it and put it in water. And it was a high volume of stuff, like buckets and buckets that you're going through. So we started by processing everything, putting it in her cold storage. Once everything is like ready to be used, then you start arranging and do that all at once. And I got to arrange too. So that was really fun. And I just was very confident and not intimidated by it because I didn't want to give the energy of like, oh, does this look good? Is this right? So I would just go and let her critique me if there's things to say, but she was very supportive and was like, even though I am a beginner, I just took my first thing and I just built my first ever arrangement that wasn't just being put into a vase last week, but she was like, you're already intermediate, you just have an eye for it. And so she definitely was
intermediate.
making me, thank you, she made me feel good about it. And I would say, okay, I feel like I'm either at a cross point where I need some help here, like I can tell it's a little imbalanced but I'm not sure where to go, or I'd say I'm done but let me know what you think, and she would give me feedback on that. But she did like there were 3 very massive ones that were being made for the head table
pieces. Yeah,
I did like all the centerpieces for most of the tables, but she did the like very big ones in the bridal bouquet, but then everything else I got to have a part in. But she just works so much faster, obviously. She's been doing it for decades, so it took me, she could probably make 3 of the same size when I made one, if not more. Like, it's just way faster. And I loved it. And I got to take home the extra leftover flowers, which is, as you can see, those anemones are leftovers. And I have an arrangement behind the setup that you can't see right now. That's a bigger, like, centerpiece arrangement I got to make with the leftover stuff. That's a lot less spectacular, I guess you would say, than the ones we made for the wedding, because any of the like really expensive blooms like dahlias and roses and those things, we used up for those. We just had leftovers like the anemones and mostly a ton of those plus some greenery that I did.
I like those.
So thank you.
I love that one with the curvy stem. Is so fun.
That's what I like, is they have really interesting stems. The thing that was hard about a lot of them is they are just like losing their petals really quickly. So already, just because we now at this point, because this was last week, these flowers have been shipped from another place and handled in and out of cold storage, yada yada. So they're at the end of their lifespan, but I still enjoy them, and I can't wait till my flower garden I can do more of my own harvesting. Obviously, you guys know I've been deadheading a lot of pansies, but their stems are about this big. They're great for putting on a little salad or cake and decorating with. You can't really do arrangements with them unless it's for a fairy house, so I need a little more time for more of my bigger ones like zinnias to be in bloom and needing to be deadheaded. But guys, I have been having a really hard time keeping up in the garden because A, I've been busy, but B, it's so hot that you could, but it would be really brutal to go out at just any time of day. You pretty much have to keep your outdoor work to the early morning hours, so I'm a little not disappointed, but just having that feeling of I wish that I had more done in my garden right now, but I try to make my garden just a peaceful, happy place for me that has no expectations for perfection or anything, and not be harsh on myself about it. But clearly when you're a gardener, you also want to have a good yield and your plants to be doing well and all those things. But I'm really proud of how Quinn's been gardening with all the other things you have to do. It's crazy that you found the time, and very impressive.
That's nice. I also feel the same way though, that I could be putting so much more into it, but I'm just wanting to enjoy it and not take it too, yeah, I want it to feel light and like a happy, positive thing, which it does feel to me. And I know that I could invest a lot more and make it a lot more magnificent. But speaking
We
of
want to hear about your
pansies,
maniac thistle harvesting.
yes, but before that, speaking of pansies, it made me think of the country home book that I found when I was in Virginia in your neighborhood little free library, because they have a lot of ways to use pansies, and they specifically talk about pansies, and they make really cute, like, one of the things would have loved to do for this soiree but was way too time intensive and I didn't get around to, is like specifically they have all these things to do with pansies, and one of them, they make really cute garlands where the pansies are hanging
Wow.
upside down and it's like on strings. And they also,
You need to send me some of the inspo.
yeah. And another thing in this book, they teach you how to drain an egg, and you can use the eggs and keep the shell, and they make eggshell garlands that are so pretty that I would love to do at some point, and my eggs would be so pretty for it. Yours would too, because we have the varied colors of our eggs.
Well, how cute is that?
But one thing I did do with our pansies for the party is, well, Sean, I had the idea, but Sean executed, made adorable square ice cubes with some of our deadheaded pansies and then some raspberries and stuff. So that was adorable, just for in the water pictures.
Yeah, you know what Martha says she likes to do is make for a wine like cooler container an ice thing with pansies or whatever flowers that you want, and she cuts the top of like a quart carton, a juice carton or a milk carton, puts, I forget, something in there, a bottle, I guess. No, what would it be? That something that you can put in the freezer, fills with water around, and like puts the flowers into it, so then you can just peel off the cardboard when it's frozen and put your wine in the little ice container.
That is very cool. Sean and I were talking about, well, this is actually for a different thing, but we haven't been buying gallons of milk for years and years, and so we were trying to think of what we could use to freeze in our big garage freezer to use for our cold plunge, but that would be lovely for the little wine arrangement. Anyhow,
Did I already,
yes.
I know, sorry, you're still having flower things to talk about, but did I already come out on the podcast as I have been back into my milk game, and we have been purchasing milk
I knew
for
that
years.
because
Like going into college, Quinn and I leaving our household, I like never bought milk after that. We never had it through college.
Well,
I never had it for
when we started college, we started to get in the half-gallon glass, really pretty containers at our local co-op that you would bring back. That was like the fresh milk. Freshman year, our first semester, we still were drinking some milk, but we would do it in the half-gallon containers.
Yeah, but then we migrated to all like plant-based milk alternatives, making our own milk, which I love to do, but especially because Quinn went dairy-free, so I just kind of went went along with her, but I don't know what compelled me. I'm drinking milk again, you guys, but even now, I don't usually pour myself a glass of milk. Not that I wouldn't, but I just don't tend to. But what I like it for is beverages, like making a coffee with milk or a tea or baked goods. I use it a lot because of baking, I feel like. Anyway, that's a very controversial opinion, and you should just mind your business about the milk that I'm drinking. Quinn, let's hear about your flowers a little more.
Okay. Yeah, Riley, I knew you were a milk drinker, and it's been
Very
in your bones
brave.
forever. I feel like you're never giving up milk for good, which I'm not saying you should. I particularly like heavy whipping cream made into whipped cream. That's my favorite dairy product, even
Me too. I
potentially over
particularly like
cheese, which I love cheese as well, but I love sheep cheese probably the best. Anyhow, party planning, you guys. I had so much fun party planning. I have so much to say, and I wish I could show you guys Bunny because he now is content, thankfully, chewing on his chew with his little paws touching the edge of the crate and just like rolling his eyes into the back of his head. Also, several of my friends met Bunny for the first time at the farmstead soiree, and they said that he's much cuter in person. So if you are getting some sort of idea online that he's only kind of cute, which that's crazy, and none of them said that. They all said they thought he was adorable, but then they said seeing him in person, it was like, wow, this is a whole different situation than we realized.
I've gotten that too about myself from the internet.
Yeah. People see you in person, they're like, oh my gosh, you're pretty. I'm being so funky dunky all over the place right now because I'm thinking about my dogs because of their issue, and then I saw Ghost sprint down the pasture and run all the way down his run to Annie, and I'm just thinking, hopefully they will tide themselves over being across the fence from each other for the next half an hour while we finish up this episode. Okay, back to focusing. Farmstead soiree planning. I told you guys that I was going to harvest some thistles from our property, and I was on the phone talking to my mom about it, telling her about my plans, bouncing ideas off of her, and she's like, do you have enough thistles for like a couple containers? I'm like, I have enough
thistles for everyone in town
to literally cover the land that is trying to be sold off by Mike Lee. So yes, I have enough thistles. The dent I made in the thistles, unnoticeable. You could never detect that I harvested any of the thistles. We have one particular problem area that just is blown up with thistles, but they're all in bloom with their purple, beautiful little flowers. So
I just am worried that people are picturing like, oh, a little thistle. You need to understand that these are
no,
massive.
they're as tall as me.
Yes.
I took a picture next to them.
Thistles.
Yes. There are some that are the smaller because they're babies, but they're up to my hips, if not up to my head. I'm not joking. So they're huge and they're so beautiful. But like I said, I was nervous trying to figure out what am I going to do because leather gloves are not enough to protect me. Also, when I was harvesting them,
it would hurt so bad if you just wrapped your hand around that thing.
I was thinking like, oh, what about snowboarding gloves or something? But it was literally 95 degrees when I'm out harvesting them. Also, don't have those. Anyway.
Those mitts that they use to like put hot glass into the...
Exactly. That's what I needed. But they're even thicker than oven mitts because they're like lined with fiberglass or something. But talking to my mom, she had the brilliant idea of me bringing tongs outside with me. So I brought my snippers and I brought tongs. So I had leather gloves on both hands, and then I'm holding tongs and to hold the thistle and then snipping and bringing with my tongs over to the bucket. And I mostly avoided pokes and pain, which was awesome. But rewind to the party planning, because I was picturing like, okay, what vessels am I going to put these thistles in? Because I need something sturdy and hardy. And I've told you guys before on the podcast that we have these big, beautiful, lovely stock tanks, like old vintage, super cool galvanized stock tanks, but those are my planter beds. So that's what I have flowers in up front, and then I have my vegetable garden planted in those. But I was thinking like galvanized bins would be great, and I have one, but one was simply not enough. And I was brainstorming because I know from being a horse girly that I could go to Murdoch's or Ace and get some galvanized buckets. That was my initial thought. But you guys know, we always want to try secondhand first with everything. It's more fun. I think it's way more fun to go to a cool vintage secondhand store than to go to Ace. So I was like, I'm trying this first. And, right, did we bring up that we went to a little antique store and found some little collage materials? I think that we told you guys that when Riley was in Colorado, one of her last days, we found this really cute little vintage antique store that had lots of different things. They have furniture, they have dishware, they have cards and little pieces of art and everything. So Riley and I went in there, and there was a really cool old vintage galvanized, how many times am I going to say vintage old antique? I don't know, but you get the point. This beautiful watering can that was such a good price, because I have looked at other watering cans on Etsy, and old galvanized stuff in good condition is hard to find. So people are marking it up. And I regretted...
at the vintage shop in Charlottesville that I found a really cute one. It was like $150 for this watering can.
So keep in mind, the watering can I found was $32 and was a crazy woman that day and decided to walk away, because I just kind of had the feeling of, we were like eating out in Jackson, we spent money, and we spent money. So I walked away. Big mistake. Pause. I need to give my dog water. Dog mom life is really getting me today. Okay. That should tide him over. Everyone cross your fingers. So, I made a big mistake. I left the watering can. I talked to my mom on the phone about it, and my mom was like, "Are you crazy? Like, go buy that. That you are not going to find another."
But then I got in trouble. Quinn's like, "Why didn't you tell me to buy it?" I'm like, "Oh, okay. So now when you're trying to be responsible and be like, you know what, I guess I'll just think about that, I'm supposed to encourage impulse buy?"
Yeah, my perception was that the reason I didn't get it was because of you. That
is crazy.
My perception is that I was like, "Wait, Riley, isn't this awesome? Like, I love this." And you were like, "Isn't that like the same size and everything like the watering can you already have?" And I was like, "But it's different, and it's a little bigger, and it's cuter." And that you were like, "I just feel like you already have a watering can like that."
Okay, well, your perception is very interesting, but keep going.
Okay, so I called the spot and said, "I'm heartbroken." No. Now I'm feeling all funky, you guys. I called and said, "Hello, my name is Quinn. I made a grave mistake. I didn't buy the watering can that I should have purchased. Is it still there?" She called back and said, "Quinn, yes, it is still there." And I said, "Oh, good. Could you please put that on hold for me?" So I went in and I was thinking anyhow. So first of all, watering can. That would be a great vessel for these thistles. But I was thinking, hopefully that will be my first stop, and I'm hoping that they will have everything I need for the rest of my hosting, party planning. But I knew it's a shot in the dark. They might not. So, got there. I got there way too close to closing, which was my bad, and because of my time management with how my day went. But the store owner who was there and running it, such a nice person. She made me feel so welcomed into the space, and she did not rush me one bit. And there were just things in the store grabbing my eye, over here, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, I need to get out of your hair. And she said, no, that is ridiculous. You do not need to talk like that. You take your time, get what you need. She was so excited hearing about the soiree. And boy, oh boy, did I luck out. Talk about a shopping spree. I haven't shopping spreed so hard since the last time we went to an antique store. No, but really, I do feel like the last time I had as big of a shopping spree was when you and I were here in November shopping at a different antique store, and we got quite a few excellent finds. But I feel much better about that because I'm supporting this small woman-owned business. I am buying secondhand. I am buying things that are going to last me truly a lifetime and that fill my cup, that are functional.
Helps everybody, hurts nobody.
Helps the economy in this case. But genuinely, I am like, this is a time where right now a lot of store owners, especially for small shops like that, are suffering. And I very specifically save my money for moments like when I'm going to invest in something that is going to make my heart happy for a lifetime. So I lucked out on the coolest Crocs, you guys. If you don't know what a Croc is, they're basically...
And we're not talking about a plastic shoe.
We are not talking about what you put gibbets through the holes of. We are talking about CROCKS that are large vessels that hold something like, I believe that they are typically very cylindrical, a little larger, usually made out of clay, if I am not mistaken. So anyway, these old Crocs are like truly, I would think at least 100 years old, that they were made for like pickling, that type of storage. And they were made in Denver, Colorado, literally hand painted on them. They're gray Crocs and hand painted in blue, says Denver, Colorado. I'm like, are you kidding me? How cool is that? So I believe it's a 2-gallon one and then a 6-gallon one, and they pair so well together, and the perfect thing for my thistles. So I was stoked. And then she also had a big galvanized bucket that I ended up at the party using for people's recycling. So it was lovely. She helped me feel so encouraged about this vision. She asked what the store owner asked what I was thinking for all of this. I told her about the thistles. She was like, yes, I love thistles. That's going to be so cool. And she was just hyping up my vision, made me feel awesome. So I got a couple other really awesome things too, but I'll just kind of zip it there to keep on moving.
The great thing about thistles is they say, I put some effort into making a nice soiree for you, but don't stay for too long. They have the thorns. They're saying don't cozy down here like you're gonna be spending the night.
Don't get too comfortable.
When it's time to go.
It's not like when there's just a bunch of roses around and people start to drift into their deep sleep and ask, do you have a spare room I can stay? They're like, oh, they kind of back up into it and remember, like, ooh,
as the light's going down and the donkey starts braying, they know.
Which actually one of my friends said that scared her. She was like, I didn't know what was happening and I was scared. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so used to that. I never would the thought occur to me to be scared of hearing that. But okay, so harvested the thistles morning of, filled a few containers. It turned out great. I did one that was a vase on the food table where we were setting out all of the snacks and the dinner. And that was just lovely. So turned out great. I used my old vintage, there those words are again, wheelbarrow, and put a mound of ice in there, and that's what we put the drinks in, which was so fun. And we had our fun little string lights. And then what was great about this whole soiree is that I decided that we should co-host it with another one of our couple friends. So that was so smart, and I'm so glad, because I asked my friends, do you guys want to co-host this with us? And we kind of both put it on. So that is a little pro tip for if you are wanting to get into hosting, and it can feel like there's a lot to manage and it can feel pretty intimidating. I felt great knowing that Sean and I were sharing this with another couple, so the duties were kind of split. Obviously, we're hosting it at our place, so like we had to get our place ready, but they came over early to help us, and they, for example, they took on baking multiple loaves of bread, which was going with our dinner. So they brought over the sourdough, and they brought over a bunch of vegetables that we were going to grill, and they brought over potatoes that were going with the dinner. So that was very helpful. And you guys know that we have the dogs that we're training, and this was not only for fun and to just like have people over to our place, I also knew it would be a great socializing opportunity for the dogs. So Sean and I were on dog duty when all the guests started to arrive, and then our two friends that co-hosted the event were not only helping like shuttle things out from the kitchen to get on the table and doing literally anything I asked. They were the best. They're like, what do you need help with? And I told them so much what to do, and I felt like I was so bossy. But I also remember the sign growing up, right, in our hairdresser's thing that said, I'm not bossy, I just know what's right, or something. Is that what it said?
I think it said, yeah, I think that's so funny. That's such a deep cut, but I think it said, I'm not bossy, I'm just always right.
Yeah, and facts are facts. That's just the truth of how I feel. So that was great because they didn't feel like I was giving them too much direction. They were like, yeah, tell me exactly how you want it. I told them they're great listeners. They put stuff together well, and so we could be focusing on the dogs and finishing up what needed to be done inside, and they were welcoming people into the place. So that was a great aspect. And then super fun how we set up stuff around. It was pretty chill though. Like that was something that was a good reminder for me, was it's okay to not have the most. In the era of Martha Stewart coming back around and everything, I can at times feel like, oh my gosh, like this party was not thrown to the level of perfection that I could have had it. Like there were definitely things I felt like, oh, I could have had the tablescapes definitely more filled out. I could have done blah, blah, blah. There's a lot I felt like I could have made it more pristine, but that's not really what it's about. And everyone enjoyed the evening so much, and everyone thought it was beautiful as it was. And I think just preparing something nice that's a group gathering effort, like that is what really counted about it. So, summary of my recommendations for throwing a party. First of all, consider finding a co-host. Second of all, consider foraging something that's free, because we saved so much money on our arrangements by literally just foraging them from our property. And you can, even if you're not someone who lives on a little farmstead like us, you can go outside into nature and find branches like I do a lot of the time. And be easy on yourself and go to the secondhand store if you need to buy something, because you'll save money and support a small business. So it was such a successful event. The pork Sean smoked was incredible. Everyone had a great time.
You
great
actually
food.
said best ever.
People did say, not only me, I think it was Sean's best pork butt that he's ever smoked. Other people also said that it was the best pulled pork that they've ever had. So
Sean's becoming a bit of the smoke master of the family, and I did reach out to him for some 4th of July advice.
that's a smart thing to do. And you might need to put his notifications on nudge and poke him again if he... Hopefully he responds.
All you have to do is bring up
you.
smoking, I guess, because he got back to me like that. So either he's locked in or he was just like, ooh, smoked meats?
Yeah, he's riding the high from this weekend.
That's so great that you guys had so much fun hosting. I feel like the other thing that is good to keep in mind for a summertime soiree, or actually any time, but when it comes to setting the vibes, obviously it's nice to have like nice plates and these sorts of things, but if you don't want to invest in that, or say you're going to host, like I was potentially thinking of doing, out at a park or something that's by some water, because it's really hot here right now, and with a smaller house, you don't necessarily want to try to pack everyone in, especially if you have a sensitive dog that might prefer some more distance from people. And so I was thinking, how can I still do something? Because I'd like to do a get together. So I thought maybe go buy some water so you can put your feet in or whatever. And I don't want out and about my nice stuff getting broken, so it might be a paper plate situation. But just a little foraged flora like you did with thistles or whatever you have around really helps with the vibe, and so does the tunage. Obviously, whatever music you have playing is going to really change the overall aesthetic of the party. If people roll up and you are playing Bad Bunny, they're going to get in a different mindset than if you're playing bossa nova. So just decide, what is the flavor that I'm going for? What is the food that I'm making? What story am I trying to tell for my guests this evening?
We did a Charlie Crockett, Casey Musgraves vibe, and people really liked it. I was nervous at first. Sean put on the music. Once again, Sean King. He was doing so well. And I was like, oh my gosh, Sean, we need to change this. Not being true to myself, because if you know me, you know I love those two, but I was so concerned because so many people are such country haters. And then one of our co-hosts was like, I actually really think this vibe is working, and people seem to be liking it. And then we got multiple compliments on the music. People asked for the playlist. Okay.
See, I did have an opposite experience when we were doing flowers. The owner was like, oh, I love hearing all different sorts of music. Why don't you put on your playlist? And I was like, oh, okay, sounds good. Put on my classic, like Charlie Crockett, Waylon Jennings, Sturgill Simpson, that Casey, just like that family of country, not pop country, but definitely still. And after a couple songs, she was like, I don't really want to listen to cowboy music. And I was like, okay, so we have to go a very different direction because there's a whole lot of harmonica coming.
Yeah. Yeah, well, people loved it at our property. I also think people really felt like they were stepping in. You know, we were having them throw their watermelon rinds over to the chickens. They're hearing the donkey bray. They're getting to go meet the equine. So I feel like people really were able to step into the Western cowboy vibe, so that worked well for us. But great that you brought up setting the table, because I had this image of my perfectly set tables. I did a couple funky fun tablecloths on them. Like I said, people brought some fresh flowers, which was great because I put those arrangements on the tables. But I was imagining that I was going to have the table immaculately set up. Time got away from us. We were working hard all day, and by the time people had arrived, I had not had the table set. So we just went with the flow, put a couple stacks of our cloth napkins that we do have kind of like, they're not second stringer, but they're just very tough, resilient linen. I call them linen. I don't know what they actually are, but napkins that we just set. Yeah, we just set them cute on the corner, and then we did a couple of mason jars of silverware and a few little candles, and we didn't even put out the plates, but my mom was so thoughtful hearing about our soiree happening that she actually mailed us our leftover wedding plates. I had forgotten that we had these, but they're like big bamboo square single-use plates, so they felt nicer and more sturdier and better for the environment than the paper, and then those could end up going in our compost. So it just, yeah, it worked out splendidly.
Did you have some cornhole going?
We did have cornhole going, yes.
Because I feel like for a summer get-together, that's also really nice as an outdoor game moment, whether that's bocce ball. I bring that up because that's an easy one to take with you places. Or a horseshoes, cornhole. Yeah,
yep, we had two
paddle ball,
things.
whatever there is.
We had 2 sets of cornhole, and then the whole food table and snack table, and in our backyard are the chickens, so people are going out to see the chickens, and it just, yeah, it all worked out great. So it was so fun, and it just made me feel like that is such, to me, it's just such an important thing to actually act on doing something like that when you want to, because everyone enjoyed themselves so much. We enjoyed ourselves so much. It feels so good to build confidence by bringing people into your space and kind of putting yourself out there, doing something new. We have hosted several times, like actually quite a few times, but rarely at that scale of it. Ended up, I think there were 16 people total. So it's nice. It's just a fun thing when it's with the right crowd too. That you also have to think about.
As you know, I've been really wanting to do that. I have my dog Roger, and most people are like, oh, a dog's gonna prevent you from hosting. Well, not everyone's dog has extreme fear of strangers coming to the home, and one by one with people, we can navigate that and have successfully many times. It does make me nervous and is a different story when it's a whole crowd coming over, because that's something he's not used to and has never experienced. Because we feel it would be hard to navigate, I do think it's possible, and I do think that we have to do it for him to ever get used to it. It is just a tough one, so stay tuned. We'll see what we end up doing, because I have been wanting to host, and of course been in my Martha Stewart era. I also just read Ina Garten's book, Be Ready When the Luck Happens, which I would recommend. That made me feel excited about that, and just bring community, I think, is really important, and being parts of groups and not only socializing one-on-one, which I tend to want to do, either one-on-one or like very few people, because that is less energy expenditure for sure, and also is when you usually tend to get into the nitty-gritty parts of friendship that I enjoy. But I do think that our generation has done a lot less socializing in bigger groups, as like post-COVID, COVID onwards, and I think that we humans like do need that type of social time as well. Anyway, guys, I was saying to Quinn earlier, I just have felt such a playing catch up on the podcast. So even though we only batched like 2 episodes, I'm like, there's so much that I have to tell you, and I still don't feel caught up, and I need to rapid fire some of these things, because otherwise I'm like, how am I ever gonna catch up with this? It's mostly like media updates, but stuff that I've been feeling so excited and inspired by. This one is very rapid fire because it's not like that revolutionary, but I did just rewatch The Sword in the Stone the other night because I just wanted to watch a comforting movie, and it's so funny. I just love the way
Harry Potter?
that No, the Disney movie Sword in the Stone. That's about
Oh,
like young King Arthur becoming king, you know,
okay.
with the wizard with Merlin. And I love like hand
God.
drawn and hand what?
Sorry, not
What?
me thinking Harry Potter. That was so funny.
Well, the Sorcerer's Stone sounds
Okay,
literally
that's
just
what
like
it.
that.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
but anyway, I get very inspired by hand drawn and hand painted animation. I just think it has
Mm-hmm.
such a different feeling to computer generated. Not that I don't also enjoy those films, but they always crack me up so much. Like, it's so funny. That movie was so fucking funny. I was laughing the entire time. And also the expressions, like, I love that. That's on my recommendations.
Wait, let
Moving
me
into.
bounce.
Okay.
Now I'll bounce a rapid fire.
Okay, well,
Um,
ping pong.
I listened to the Sorry We're Cyrus, which used to be called Sorry We're Stoned. I think I had told you guys about them before. It's Brandy Cyrus and Tish Cyrus. They have a podcast, and Miley just was on for the very first time doing her promo for her new album, Something Beautiful. And if you are a Miley fan, I think it's a very fun thing to listen to. So,
Okay. Clocked. Will. Um, next, I read this book that was so good. So I will plug that. But first, I'm going to plug the book that I'm listening to right now by the same author. Her name is Amanda Montell, and she is a linguist. This book that I'm currently listening to and am not done with yet is her first book. It's called Wordslut, all one word, Wordslut. And this I'm plugging first because if you're gonna read one of the two, I think you should read this one because it's all about how language can uphold or dismantle patriarchy and using like language to feminist ends and how our speech can really reflect, not can, it does reflect social norms and values, and we can use that to a destructive or constructive end, and by being aware of language we're able to wield a lot of power. And I really want everyone to read this. Dad, put down your David Baldacci and pick this up. I'm not kidding. It's required reading. I think it's required reading for everyone, but especially
old
the men
man.
out there who want to be supportive of women. And if anyone has ever said, I have a wife, I have a sister. Okay, if you're going to use that for your argument, then I want to see the receipts for how you have furthered your education in feminism and are educating yourself and not just relying always on the women in your life to do that for you. And it's just a really, really great book that I'm very grateful to have stumbled across. The book of hers that I listened to first is called Cultish, the language of fanaticism. And that's really interesting. And I listened to it all in one day while I was working on flowers and was very invested. And not all academic writing does that. Like, even if something's very interesting and it's worth learning more about, sometimes academic writers can get a little bogged down in their
Boring.
language and it's not very compelling, but this she's just an excellent writer and is able to make the subject of linguistics, which I have taken classes in, and let me tell you, I was like, God, I'm
Snooze
someone that loves
fest.
language and this sucks. So highly, highly
Okay,
recommend.
perfect. Well, even the names, the titles of the books are good, so that says something. Okay, back to me. I will very quickly tell you guys about our owl encounter that I have just been blessed as hell this whole summer with the great horned owls. There have been multiple times of them swooping overhead while I'm walking the dogs or out at the barn, so I've had a lot of sightings, which has been excellent. But ever since Roger was such a good boy and pointed out the owl to us in the tree, and Riley and Brayden fetched the binoculars for us, now our binoculars are conveniently located on our windowsill right here because we have been having the best sightings. So a few nights ago, we were eating dinner in our backyard, and one of the owls flew onto the fence very near us. I would say, like, I don't know, 100 feet away. And we're looking at it like, oh my gosh, okay, go grab the binoculars. And then the second owl flies in, lands next to it on the next fence post. Then the third, then the fourth. You guys, we're up to 4 great horned owls lining the fence.
So crazy.
Near our backyard. And we couldn't tell. We thought, like, are those ones maybe look a little smaller? We knew that there had been babies somewhere along the line. But then with the binos, we could actually tell, oh my gosh, those 3 are all the babies. And they're not like tiny little babies. I bet they're 1 or 2 years old now. I feel like they're 2 probably because of how long we've been seeing them. And it was lovely watching them. So cool. One of them flew away. It was actually the mom. The mom flew away. And then one of the other guys flew away. So 2 remained. And we noticed upon further investigation that one of them had a whole rabbit that it was holding on to. And he ended up flying into the tree, still right there, in sight. And we had the most amazing experience of watching this owl eat dinner. The rabbit that he hunted on our property. And it might sound like, oh, what a gross thing, and to watch them being pulled apart. First of all, it's not like we were seeing blood and guts being splattered or anything like that. But Sean and I both had to turn on the binoculars and both individually got to see the owl eat an entire leg, and they start like at the hip and then just glug, glug, glug down until the foot ends up going down. And honestly, it was just such a special moment that gave me a lot of peace and just feeling of like clarity and understanding more so of the circle of life, because it didn't seem like a gross, disgusting thing. It just was honestly beautiful and amazing. And I'll stop there.
Well, I love that perspective, and it's so cool and lucky. The picture of all the birds that Sean got, again, Sean, how do you take the binocular photos? You actually need to tell us, because I don't understand. Quinn and I both are like bumblefucking our way through it, trying so hard.
And we have a way nicer phone than him too, with a better camera, and those are on his phone. I'm like, what are you doing?
So that's crazy, and we're lucky that we got to see that, even though I didn't see it in person as well. And also, it's wild. I don't know what other birds do this. I'm sure it may be like just other raptors, or I don't know. But like you said, owls just swallow things whole, but then they regurgitate what they can't digest, like the bones and the fur. Mm-hmm. And so you'll see where owls live, like piles of the little bones and stuff, because they just go down the pipe with the whole thing.
Oh yes, Bunny loves to try to snarfle those up off the ground when we walk.
Awesome. One thing that I want to tag on that I forgot to say, talking about Wordslut, to circle back to the top of the episode when I said, oh, let me get back to that. I'm just so grateful to be reading this book, because so many ideas that we are told about language are wrapped up in sexism without us realizing it. And one of those things is, she talks about how interrupting is done in very different ways by men and women, and women tend to use it to like affirm or build in conversation with each other, and specifically men are much more likely to interrupt women than other men. Men tend to do like monologue, talking back and forth to each other, while women tend to go back and forth much more frequently. On the
God,
podcast, I
that's
feel
why
like
it's so
sometimes
insufferable to listen to men speak. They will talk for 14 minutes without pause.
I know, which I do sometimes feel like we do on here, but that's a podcast is obviously a different thing because we're trying to, get out these thoughts and both share in that way. And Quinn and I in person have a lot more interjections when we're talking than when you're doing it long distance. If you do that, it can mess up the audio and there's a lag, whatever. I don't need to explain it. But it also made me feel more affirmed in our speech because listening to the podcast, sometimes I feel, oh God, like saying whatever words that we have been taught, oh, that sounds unintelligent, or that makes you sound unsure of yourself, or less confident. Pretty much every example of that has to do with sexism, and that actually the way that linguists have studied language and learned is that women tend to be the ones who are at the forefront of the trends of language, and we change language over time, and specifically young women, the way that we talk becomes down the line the way everyone talks. It starts with young women, and I just am feeling in so many ways reading this like, wow, I do not have to change my language to please anyone, and in fact, changing my language the way that people have called it out to be or should be, pretty much every example, now that I know more about it, is because of the patriarchy. And as you know, I'm not one to want to fall into that camp, so I will be speaking as I do. Same with cussing. I just think that you guys should read this book because she can explain all these things better than I can, but just about like there's way different social implications for women to curse than men, and that the idea of that not being ladylike has deep roots, but what the studies show just tell a different story, and I feel vindicated by that and also frustrated by so many things. You know how usually if a group is all women, you can address them as gals, ladies, whatever, but as soon as there's one man, you have to change that language, and otherwise it's so offensive to think that a guy could be like grouped in with a bunch of women, so then everyone becomes guys. And so I'd already been doing this lately, and now I feel like I am even more into that, is if it's still like predominantly women, you can say, hey gals, however you want to address it, and if the men are all frustrated, it's just like, oh, well, why is it the most like deeply offensive thing that could happen to you to be referred to as a feminine kind of term when women? The thinking is that the default person is a man, and so we can all be defaulted as men, guys, whatever, but it doesn't work the opposite way, and in reality the default is not male, and we can work to change that. So very excited about that. Gosh, Quinn, I'm trying to think. There's Love Island, but I guess we'll just talk about that next week, and maybe you'll have caught up a little bit more. The one thing I will say is that last night's episode, or 2 nights ago if you're listening on Tuesday, it was the heart rate challenge, and I do love the heart rate challenge. Excellent producing on that. I love that the whole point of Love Island is to just like make people do kind of silly, outrageous things on TV that are sexy, because people like sexiness and hotness and having an outlet for those things, where, again, the feminist comes out. Women are usually punished and shunned and face negative repercussions for sexuality, and that dynamic is still at play in Love Island, do not get me wrong, but in the challenges, it does give people more license to get their freak on. However, even within the parameters of the show, I definitely notice that there is more of a consequence on women for how they act in those moments than guys.
When they do the reveal of how many people have you slept with and whatever,
yes, that's what I was
way
gonna say.
more so. The women's numbers is
the
like
guys
the
are like
highest being
110,
yeah.
and a girl, they're like, oh, you once slept with 2 guys in one day?
Yeah.
Jeez.
No, it's the highest number was 18 for how many people that the girls had slept with, and the highest number was over 100 for the guys. And for the guys, they were just like, oh, yeah, now I get it, whatever. And the girls are like, okay, I guess that's not that bad. It's like,
but then there's a girl that's only slept with 1 guy, and they're like, 1? Okay,
yeah.
so you really just can't win if you're
Yeah.
a woman, is what it is, but that sucks. Dang it, Quinn. I'm like, there were so many things I want to tell you. Should I save about my other class that I recently took, or should I just get into it briefly?
I feel like save, because I know you'll do more this week and you can tell us more about it.
Okay, teaser, stay tuned. So I guess I'll wrap that up. I love a summertime soiree. Quinn gave us so much excellent inspo for that. I don't even know if you really took any photos, but if there's a little photo or two, you'll be able to find it on our episode carousel on Instagram, that we like to give you guys little visual snapshots into the things that we talked about in the week, if at all available. That's at the Q&R code. And please remember to subscribe and download if you're listening. That's helpful to get us found on the algorithm, especially, as you can imagine, with a name like the Q&R code. A lot of people stumble into us thinking that we might be coders or in the computer space. Not the case. So help the fellow girlies, gays, and great guys of the world find us. And we are wishing you a very happy midsummer. Goodbye, June. You are a lovely, excellent, some might say the best month. And here we go into mid and late summer with July and August hurtling towards us.
Yeah, thank you all for listening so much. And I've had just such a pleasure hearing so many people recently. Again, I feel like I've said it the last few episodes, but I've even since had more people tell me that they listen. So I just so appreciate it. And if you guys love our podcast, you can always share on your stories or share by the word of mouth. All of that is so helpful, and we are so grateful every time you guys engage with us and tell us that you listen. It makes our little hearts flutter. Our little cold hearts just melt a little bit and become slightly warmer, just crack, crack. And one day enough people will tell us that they listen that the ice will just totally shatter off and it'll just be warm beating hearts in our chest. So you don't know how big of a difference you make.
Sending lots of love to all of you, and talk to you soon. Goodbye.
Bye.